Do you have your ticket with you? Yes,
go right in.
Okay. I'm supposed to need a time to get over that. All nine are. It kind of gets a little shy.
You're both from Scotland. Whereabouts in relation to the location in the movie do you live?
Right, well, we both live in I'm a Canadian originally, but I've lived in Britain for quite some time. This story wasn't being told in a truthful way in the local media, the story of this developments, and we kind of found that really. We went up there to, we'd read about the developments, and we were just wanted to know more about it really. And I think maybe to begin with, we were thinking maybe of doing, we're kind of journalists by background, and there might be a kind of more of a journalism story there. And so we went up and talked to the residents, most of the main characters you see in the film, and it was just immediately apparent, that this not only was this a fascinating story, but just that nothing of the real, the truth of the story was really coming out. And Anthony just then and there, I think, decided that he would start to pursue the story. So it was basically filming over a kind of period of a year, kind of a glimpse of this struggle between the local residents and Mr. Trump, and the consequences on the natural world of this struggle as it takes place there.
What political faction was behind Trump in Scotland to give him carte blanche treatment?
Well, the current government of Scotland, and Scotland has its own government that has responsibilities that are somewhat different from the national United Kingdom government, and the current government, which is the Scottish National Party, which is a separatist party actually, but it's a national, very much strongly kind of pro-Scotland party. They're the ones who gave Mr. Trump the green light, and not only gave him the green light, but had to overturn a kind of planning process which had rejected the proposal as it was presented by Mr. Trump. So they are the political party that does have to take responsibility.
So the majority of the Scottish people put them in power.
They did, and in fact they've been re-elected with a majority just before our film came out. So yes, it was very much the Scottish government all of the people of Scotland who supported the development. But certainly when people see the film, we've had. I don't think we've had anybody who's seen the film and come up to us and said, I think that it was a good thing that Mr. Trump went ahead with the development, I must say.
What progress is the Trump project at this point in time?
Well, I mean, the golf course is being built fairly rapidly, and they claim that it might be finished next year. However, the rest of this quite large development of the hotel and 450 houses, luxury houses, and another golf course has been stopped, actually, apparently because of the economic downturn, according to the Trump Organization. So whether that will start again, we don't know. It is kind of ironic because initially one of the reasons for supporting the development is that it was a big development in a time of economic uncertainty. Well, here we are in economic uncertainty, and now that's the reason for it not going ahead. So it's to think that this wilderness area, one of the very last stretches of wilderness in Britain, could be ruined, not only for a golf course, but because of a so-called economic bonanza from a building project, and that building project doesn't even occur. I mean, it becomes a really sad story, I must say.
So the scientific community in Scotland frowned on this project.
Yeah, there really were no, at least environmentalists, scientists from the environmental side of things that were in favor of it, despite Mr. Trump's continual statements that they were supportive. I mean, it just isn't true.
How's Michael Forbes doing nowadays?
Well, I mean, the film is very recently finished, so the way you see Michael Forbes in there is very much how he is, I think, today, and his mother, Molly, and his wife, Sheila. I think he's holding up. I mean, they're all, they're very strong people, as you see in the film, and they're determined. But that doesn't mean they're not, strongly affected by the, the uncertainty of what's going on, and also just the attacks they receive. I mean, the verbal attacks. You see the kind of, statements that Mr. Trump makes, and they have an impact. I mean, it's maybe not for the people around them, but people in Aberdeen or outside, a lot of people just assume there must be something to what Mr. Trump is saying, and so they're terrible personal attacks on the Forbes in general, but they're very they have thick skins, but no one's skin is that thick, I think. But I think the film is helping to. It's helping. They do have support from activists who try to come to their side to some extent, and certainly I think the film. I think they do feel the film shows what the reality is like, and I think that's been helpful. I hope it's been helpful, anyways. Whether it's helpful down the road, we'll have to see, I guess.
Is this your and Anthony's first documentary project?
It's our first feature-length documentary. We've done other documentaries, sometimes news documentaries, kind of shorter format things. We've also done radio documentaries. So we've done a number of films in various parts of the world, but they've been shorter length, maybe half an hour or less. So this is our first feature-length documentary.
Do you have your eyes on any other projects in the future?
Well, I know Anthony, the director, is planning a film in Afghanistan, actually, as on a children's hospital in Afghanistan, which is a bit of change of pace. But we have done quite a bit of filming in that part of the world, and so that is really the next project that's that's very much in development. And the others are just ideas at this point.
Will you be sharing in that project as well?
I think so. It depends on the. Whenever we do a project together, we end up kind of figuring out how we share the responsibilities.
What film festivals will it be coming?
Right. Well, the film premiered at Hot Docs, which is a very large festival in Toronto at the beginning of May, and then appeared at the Sheffield Documentary Festival in Britain, which is the United Kingdom's largest documentary festival. And so then we were just absolutely delighted to be here, to be chosen here as a real honor. I know, when you see the films here, it's really quite, it's quite moving personally, I think, for Anthony and myself to be a part of the crowd, the part of the group of filmmakers that are here. And so from here, the film will go to the Hamptons Film Festival in the Eastern Seaboard, and also down to Alabama, I think, and a couple of film festivals in Britain, and we'll see from there.
Richard, it was a fantastic documentary.
Okay, well, thank you.
And here comes the director right here, Anthony.
Do you want to get in there?
Yeah, just for a second. Just for a second, Anthony. Richard.
No, thanks very much,
Pleasure talking with you.
Oh, yeah, sorry about
Anthony, I was so rude out there.
No, you weren't at all.
Oh,
I was just trying to, it's fine. You're happy.
I was having an enjoyable conversation with your counterpart right here.
Yeah.
Richard said that this is your first feature documentary.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's the first feature documentary we've made. I mean, Richard and I have made films around the world together and some pretty difficult places, but we never expected, in some respects, we've filmed in Afghanistan, Pakistan, places like that together, and we never thought we'd be dealing with a situation where I was arrested and both of us were arrested and put in prison cells.
In Afghanistan?
No, in Scotland. So we're never expecting that to happen, obviously. So it's quite an extraordinary journey, really, and quite a story that I think resonates with people around the world, because everybody has these stories where there are developers trying to change and build upon sensitive environmental areas in their backyard, and this is a story I think that we all have in some respects in communities all over the world.
Do you see that this is a trend that's building, and not only Scotland but on Europe? Throughout Europe, where interest from billionaires like Trump are trying to do the very same thing elsewhere?
Well, I mean, I think there are other films here at the festival that show similar kind of parallels. Battle for Brooklyn, for example, is a story where a developer comes in and wants to build skyscrapers and a basketball stadium in Brooklyn, and that's a billionaire developer, a mogul with power and influence, doing a similar kind of thing. In Europe, I think there are bound to be cases similar. I don't actually know of the details of them, but I mean there are. I think wherever you go in the world, I did see Battle for Brooklyn in Brooklyn, and there was a French woman there at the screening who was saying, "Oh, I'd like to show this film because it really does resonate with the situation we have locally." And I think that's very much the case all over Europe and the wider world. Where people are trying to balance development against the environmental challenges that we all face.
Richard had commented that the government that's in power right now, that the vast majority of Scotland put them in power, obviously. So, the few people that, like Michael Forbes, and I cannot remember the woman, the elderly woman.
Yeah, Molly, that's his mother, Molly, yeah.
How many people are being affected? How many citizens are being affected by this Trump project?
Well, the Trump project doesn't affect a huge number of people. I mean, he essentially purchased hundreds of acres of land, and there are several houses, several residents who live in the footprint of that land, but essentially he's decided to build the golf resort around those houses. And so in essence it's a small group of people, but these are people who feel very passionately about the environment in which they live. They feel passionately about the grounds, the land that they live on, they've raised their families on in some cases, and they feel a real sensitive attachment to the environment. And so although it's not a huge number of people, it's a very committed group of people who I think this whole business has brought them closer together and made them realise in a way how as a community it's quite affecting. And they have, I think, become unlikely environmentalists. They never set out to fight for the environment, really. I mean, they just love the area and they feel very passionate about it, and they know it very well as well because they've seen it move and shift and change over decades and generations in some cases.
It just seems to me that with so few people being affected, the vast majority of Scotland, like a lot of people really weren't really aware of the situation that was taking place right there. So there's a real horrible lack of sympathy for these people, I would imagine.
Yeah, I think when people see the film, I think they feel that they're in a position where they can make up their own minds at the first time, and our film is an attempt to try and get to the truth of this development and what's happened. And so I think, in a way, people feel that the film gives them the other side of the story, and there is a sympathy and empathy with the people who are at the direct front of this story, the local residents. And I mean, I've found when we've done the screenings in other cities like Glasgow, Edinburgh and Aberdeen, the people who come to see the film, they have two responses really. One is they feel angry and let down by those in power, including the police, including the government. They feel that the Trump organisation has ridden roughshod over those authorities, and they feel ignorant actually as to what's really been happening, and they feel angry as well with their local media. They don't feel their local media has been doing them a service, and they feel let down by that. And I think those are the kind of reactions that we're very much seeing when we show the film.
Well, there's a very similar thing going on in our own country. I'm sure you're aware of Medicare being, onslaughted on, and along with other social institutions within the country and whatnot. So it just really rings very, very similar to what Trump is doing in Scotland right now. So,
I mean, I think there are parallels on all kinds of fronts of the story with the stories that you just mentioned. There's also the Rupert Murdoch story in our country, where Rupert Murdoch has his newspapers have been accused of not telling the truth in stories. And so here we have and that's a media mogul with big power and influence over the police and over the government and all these kind of things. And then here we have in this story, Donald Trump as a tycoon, a property developer coming in and having influence, and people I think all over the world are asking questions, about power and money and its influence over the way that we want to live our lives, and they feel quite angry and let down and disappointed about it, I think, at the moment.
Richard had commented that your next documentary will possibly take you to Afghanistan. Can you touch a little bit on that?
Yeah,
project?
I think the next film that I'd like to make is very different to this one. It's set in Afghanistan, in Kabul, around a children's hospital, but it's very much, I think, based on the similar kind of feeling that I have in terms of wanting to try and make these kind of films. Is that with the Trump film I felt quite angry that the true story of this development wasn't coming out, and in Afghanistan, having made films with my colleague Richard there previously, I felt that the truth hasn't really come out there. Sometimes with the people and the people of Afghanistan, I feel often we see some fantastic, and there is a fantastic film playing at this festival about the soldiers working in Afghanistan and on the front line in terms of battling against IEDs and the challenges they face. But the embedded journalist or filmmaker with soldiers is something that we're kind of familiar with seeing in that particular film. Is really quite different. But the point is that I feel that the stories that have come out from Afghanistan haven't always told the truth or given the whole picture about the local people, and they're not necessarily painted in that way. And the film I'd like to make is set around a children's hospital in Kabul where there are Western medics working alongside their Afghan colleagues, and I'd like the film to try and get to know those, the Western medicine meeting ancient traditions to head on in that hospital, and to get to know these people, these Afghan people and their children, and the children who are the country's future. And so that's the film that I'd like to make next.
Well, I wish you nothing but the best, you and Richard, on your next project.
Oh, thanks very much.
This was
Thank
a terrific documentary.
Oh, thank you very much.
And it's been a pleasure talking with you and Richard.
And you as well. Thanks a lot for having us here.
I wish you well.
Thank you. Yeah, great.